Spurgeon is one of the members from our committee, in addition to me, that are here tonight. So we thank the committee and especially thank them. Thanks to the Willamette Falls media, finally. So we are doing the recording here, and this is the feed is going to the Living Library YouTube channel through the services of Willamette Falls Media. So we thank Joshua Reynolds, who is our technician, our guru at Willamette Falls Media, for everything that he does. So thank you, Josh. We're giving you a hand here at the, we're giving you a hand here for everything that you do, which is very supportive here at the library. I did mention about the grant that we got, so if you would please give us some feedback, that would be great. It is National Poetry Month. I think we all know it's National Poetry Month, and so we're celebrating. And so this is one of the ways that we're celebrating here in Milwaukee, is having meetings like this. And I'll share with you that I went to the 100th anniversary of the Poet Laureate reading with Kim Stafford and Pauline Peterson and Anis Mojani the other night. And one of the takeaways I had is that Kim Stafford was talking about sharing poetry in person and being kinship events. The kinship events, we're connecting with each other. And that's, he said, that's what we were having at the Lake Oswego Library last Sunday night. That's what we're having tonight. We're having a kinship event where we're sharing poetry. So I'm very grateful for all of that. Now, let me introduce our poet tonight. And we're delighted to have Brittney here. This is the second time that she's read the Milwaukie Poetry Series. The first time was when we were at the Pond House. So we were at the Pond House a number of years before that needed to be redone and then sold. So we moved to the St. John the Evangelist for a bit in an interim, then came here and the library was ready for us. So Brittney is here tonight with us, and she's the author of Poetry Collections Daughters, Breaking, Navigation, and 40 Weeks. So last PM, a collection of poems about climate change, extinction, and the Anthropocene age is forthcoming from Jack Lake Press this July. So Brittney has a date.
July 10th.
July 10th, that's great, that's even more specific. That's it, July. Okay, that's great. There's a card to order that you want there, which is back on the table. She was raised in Colorado and has lived in Portland, Oregon for the past 3 years, where she is an alumna and an employee of Reed College. She is currently at work on her first short story collection. So on the invitation is her website, and that's more information. Take a look at her website, which is BrittneyCorrigan.com. Before I actually introduce Brittney too, I have this sitting here in front of me, so that reminds me, if you would silence your cell phones, telephonic devices, so they don't go off during the reading. Would you join me in welcoming our poet tonight, Brittney Corrigan?
Hi, folks.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks everybody for coming and for the folks who are watching online now or later. And to Tom for having me again in the series. This is one of my favorite poetry series in town. I'm always an honor to be here, either as an audience member or as been reading at the library for hosting us. It's great. So to all of you, I'd like the short note reference. My writing group is here tonight. We usually meet on Wednesday nights. And they've given up the critique this week to be able to come and see in person, so this is very fun. I'm going to read to you from my 2 poetry collections and then from the forthcoming collection, which, as Tom said, you can pre-order now. Pre-order period has started. So I'm going to start by reading to you from this little chapbook, Breaking. And this is a series of poems that are all about events in the news over the past several years. And I will say that the book is a little bit dark, but I'll try not to be dark the whole time. Relating to terrible events and climate change. There's some hope and beauty in there too. So this first poem was written after the female pilot who safely landed Southwest Airlines Flight 1380 with only one casualty on April 17th, 2018. This poem is called Unflapped. It's for Tammy Jo Schultz and the rest of us. When all the wide world is unhinged, not just the weather with its connection of extremes, but also the cracking open of our species, the dark fringes scrabbling their way to light. That's when we most need the pilot. The level-headed timbre of her voice with a crisp altitude of air. It's not just 149 souls on that plane as it tilts and plummets. It's all of us reaching up for the oxygen masks, all of us trying to pull one another back. We need how she navigates us through the turbulence of fear, how she calmly corrects to our destination, how she asks for everything we'll need. We are single engine and gaping, but we're not blazing yet. The pilot, she soothes, and we are bracing. We trust her while we descend. This voice not angelic or steel, no, she's just human. But she's carrying all of us. The blue smudged to a blur, despair now clanking wildly at our ears. We are peeled open and falling, but she is what we need. A clear, sane, winging back to earth. No, not all of us, but most of us. The gravity of our hearts plunging for what we've lost, ripping onto each other, remembering what's worth saving as the mess of us lands. Oh, it's interesting reading. So I'm thinking back to the past years.
Pilot did like that.
Excellent. Okay, so this one was written, so probably most of the Pacific Northwest folks know about this one. This is after the mother orca at Milwaukie, who carried her dead calf for more than 2 weeks near the San Juan Islands in July and August of 2018. This was happening while immigrant families were being separated at the U.S. border with Mexico. This is called the carrying. Epigraph at the beginning: grief and love don't belong to us. We share it with other animals. Barbara King. The carrying. We cannot see the bottom of a heart pulled up with loss, or chart the weight of what's empty, its heavy press. What we see is the dead orca calf balanced on its mother's rostrum, how deep she dives to retrieve it each time it falls off. We watch the circular surfacing of the female whales keeping vigil near the moonlit cove, lapped by the sailor's speed. We dare not take the orca calf away. Fiercely, we protect this ritual of carrying, empathy surfacing in our veins. We can say, she's pushing through a 4-knot current with labored breaths. We can say her baby has been dead 4 days. When we say this, the blood in our own hearts leadens. The orcas are better than we are at buoying up our own. We watch how the human mothers carry their children from harm, endangered hearts pulsing with fear and love. We can say they are pushing through forbidden borders with labored breaths. We can say they have been traveling for days. What we see is the children wrenched from their mother's arms, the families in a tight circling, the sinking to their knees. The mother whale falls behind the others. We see her and weep. The tide is against us. The children slip and slip and slip away. A little bit dark too, but I promise the fourth one from this one is not dark. So this one, on sort of a similar theme, this one's after the border wall construction that was happening at the site of the National Butterfly Center in Mission, Texas, in February of 2019. The center is home to 240 species of butterflies and is situated at the threshold of the U.S.-Mexico border in the Rio Grande Valley, along with several other sacred sites and endangered wildlife habitats. Sanctuary. May we not be detained before we exchange our many wearied feet for the paper of waves. Instead of a wall, let there be a chrysalis, emergent shell our bodies make so we may safely close. A barrier by any name scars the liminal milk-weeded ground where our dead dissolve and the river eats our thirst. Do not come with your slice of machines, your monster of unscalable steel morphing in our hammock of trees. Let our liquid imaginal cells become the possibilities of color unfolding as we reassemble what makes us whole. Let not the land be divided, nor the silken clutch of our bodies, nor our hearts that hang and twist in the fight. This is the closing poem of this book, and this is my uplifting one for you all. So this was a cool event. This was after the first all-female spacewalk that happened outside the International Space Station on October 18, 2019. It's called Astro Sisters, which is what the two female astronauts called each other. Astro Sisters. On the earth that passes beneath, leaves brighten nova-like in the cooling air, and young girls ready their costumes for Halloween. Growing bones step into flight suits with embroidered names, transparent globes frame buoyant faces freckled with stars. Miles above, two women navigate the space station in weightless calm, their voices tethered to the woman in mission control who talks them through each task, each measured step to power the solar arrays. At the pace of this spacewalk, we have come to this moment slowly, when the women do their work in the universe and their male crewmates look out through the glass. As the Astro Sisters climb their way back into the airlock, Girl Scout troops are rapt with attention. Teenage girls in physics class follow the live stream on the miracles train springs in their palms. And the little daughters, not yet in school, watch as the hatch door opens. And where once there was darkness, now there is infinite space. Okay, so now for something completely different. So this is Daughter, which came out from Airly Chats in 2021, fellow Airly editor and a fellow Airly poet here tonight. This is all persona poems that are in the voices of daughters of various characters from mythology, folklore, popular culture. So I'm going to give you 4 of their voices this evening. So I always like to start with this one. She's my good Pacific Northwest daughter. This is Bigfoot's daughter. You want to believe in the bulk and brown of him reeling through the thicket. That flash you thought you saw, the eyes that spun. You want terror to walk beside you. You want the wild rush of escape. You want the story. You want to be alone with your fear, all of it true. Your heart loud like a woodpecker striking the trees that seem no longer peaceful but sentient and poised to uproot. That cry in the woods that swallows all other sound. But listen, what I want you to hear is birdsong. The lifting that comes from such beauty, the way the trills and warbles sift through the stalling rain, a light on the ghosts of our breath, congregate and hover as the forest hums. My father, he is fine furred and tawny, eyes green as fiddlehead ferns, tangled and swift with his stories, his laughter sweeps through the undergrowth, bends you aside. I place my small footprints in his footprints, leave you stunned. If you watched the edges of his heart dental forth through his body, soft and blurred and glowing, will you change your mind about the monster? Witness the glisten and tremble, the moon gazing down on the paws of the lake. Like that, the dark not so complete. My father, I ride on his shoulders, bring the sky down with my singing, fill your chest with a joy you can't explain. We can make you believe what you saw in the woods is something fierce and secret, the story of your own life, but not yours to claim. So this is my personal favorite daughter. So now, if you've read the book, or if you read it later, you need to get in touch with me and tell me who your favorite daughter is. I should have been keeping track of this from the beginning. And so far, he's nobody's favorite but mine. But I'm going to give her to you. But you can let me know. So this is the alien abductee's daughter. My mother isn't a sci-fi movie 1960s housewife drying her hands on her apron as she hastily walks into the yard where there's a bright beam waiting to levitate her through the whipping wind kind of gal. She makes grilled cheese sandwiches sensibly with butter on both sides and pickles and tomato soup. She reads novels of literary merit, maybe a little magical realism thrown in, but not enough to make her moony. She believes in ghosts, it's true, the same way she believes in mathematics. The beauty of theories and formulations, the attempt to enumerate all things. Black holes, gravity, planetary orbits and tides, weather, dark matter, energy. What I'm saying is, I believe her. If she lost time, it likely was because of the UFO. I mean, she's not an invents bedtime stories kind of mom. There's nothing impossible about it. It all comes down to simple math. Listen, my father's not really my father. That's what I'm trying to tell you. When he's gone, we know exactly where he goes. You can smell it on his clothes, sour and sloppy. My mother was returned only slightly disheveled and carrying me. See, my skin has a shimmery gray undertone. Just look at my whopping green eyes. We don't need my father anymore. They're coming back for us. I can feel it. That's why my mother stands in the yard every night, crying, holding my hand. We're certain we know the lights will come. And I always like to read a daughter. I don't read very often, so that he gets her voice in the room too. This is Clockmaker's Daughter, one of the series that are professions. Those. Clockmaker's Daughter. This is why I like to open all things once alive. What is the body but a clock of our being? How we measure day against night, or number the turns of our flesh. When my father leans over his workbench, ears laid out amidst the threaded screws, I am there next to him, assembling the bones of a mouse. Crickets chime to mark the dusky hours, and birds declare the summiting dawn. The wheelwork, plied by my father's skill, is synchronized to their unfailing calls. Today, I am dissecting a fish, its lovely scales reflected in my scalpel, gills spread by my forceps to inspect this miracle of breath, sequence of ribs thin as second hands. My father's truing caliper is not so different, fashioning intricacies of brass and steel, for his peen hammer to flatten and forge. What he builds is an echo of what tick-tocks beneath all of our skins. This bird, this blob, riveted to the perfect mechanics of wings. These hands I use to cleave, his hands on the piercing saw, the hands we make, what we can make with our hands. One more daughter. So she is the one everyone tells me is their favorite. So I call her my proud leader daughter. There's a series in here that are mythological daughters. She's one of those. This is Simon's daughter. Our songs are not for you. My mother didn't teach me to lilt a lyric from my throat, to crest a note from my tongue, in order to enthrall or summon a man. Such conceit, to think a goddess would sing of men's deeds. We sing for the same reason cranes sing, for the deepening wails or a whole fierce chorus of wolves. I wish all of you would bind your rough and yearning bodies to the masts of your figure-headed ships, sails of heat in the salty wind breaking the waves, because, truth be told, I've had enough of your maddening inability to keep your hearts and hands to yourselves. Your excuses puddle round your boots, but still you come. My mother says men cannot leave a thing of beauty to unfurl of its own accord. You must always lean in and pluck it, roots and all, no matter the withering. So we have to make our homes among the sharpest rocks. We have to pick the roughest whorl of seas. And if we draw your ships to smithereens, well, that will not keep us from singing. Okay. So now I'm going to give you a handful from the new book, which I don't have a beautiful cover today yet, but the cover art is by Brittney Corrigan, who's a Portland artist, and it's beautiful. It's called Solastalgia, which is a word that it means like an existential distress caused by climate change and the state of the earth currently. So I'm going to give you, so yeah, it's a little dark too, but I promise there's a little hope for me. So throughout the book, there's a series of what I call the world without us poems. And so this is one of those, and have it in front of you on the right side if you want to read along. So this one is the strip mall changes its mind. At first, it took comfort in a sense from body beyond. Floral powders and cinnamon lotions mingled in the stuffy dim. It watched over so many unfooted shoes, bright dresses called out in bold prints to suits in the dry cleaner's rack, still rows of ghosts. Then the grief set in, the conveyor belt of Sushi Town twisted like an empty cut, its capillaries of people gone, quiet at the heart. Undone, it hardly noticed windows shattering, walls crumbling as trees limbed their way in. Sunlight on every rain-warped floor. Missing the humans with their electric bodies, wires and pipes spilled out between unmoved beams. Tireless beaks bored holes in everything. But the moss was so soft, it made the unframing bearable. Signs unlatched, bedded down in tendrilled leaves. When the fox moved in, birthed two russet kits in a thicketed shopping cart, wind like a breath, a sigh, rose past the splintered rafters, the unlit lights. And so it happened, the forgetting, painless, its tender reclaiming, dangling ceiling tiles, sloppy with stars. There's also a series of what I call the unloved animal poems. I love all of them. So they have little odes to them. This is Possum Nocturne. Perhaps it is poor night vision that keeps us from seeing how you preen our streets, devouring what the sunlit crows have left behind. We misunderstand your mouth, crowded with keen-edged teeth that dissect and undo the flesh. We are too squeamish, too unbrave to carry with our human hands. We should envy your thanatic form, how death visits you, but then retreats. Why do we not adore your prehensile tail, how you dangle and brace and grip like the acrobats we embellish with sequins and tongue? The darkness inside your pouch, the nyctophilic eyes ripening within, should allure us, like the night sky we wish watched over our city noise, the one so thick with stars we are less blind for its light. Okay, I don't write this one very often because it's a big block like this, like one breath, but I'm gonna try to do it for you. This one's called Medium. Forget the day. How hours flatten the way rising water turns islands back to sea, how minutes tire of treading and flail their tentacled fingers above the surface, grasping at bow legs, the mired limb of a trash vortex, anything to hold on to before seconds turn blue from the effort and the whole mess siphons down. Yes, forget the day. In terms of this planet, a planet that has been here 4.5 billion years, our existence but a fraction of a percent, a blip even to the dinosaurs that tromped and scrabbled themselves across the Earth's crust 159 million years longer than we've been digging our toes in the sand, swinging from branches, praising the soil or stewarding the land, or unrocking the mountains, or replacing redwoods with skyscrapers, or talking about the weather, or generally fucking everything up. Yes, this isn't about the day anymore. It's about reach out and grab that ice shelf. Don't let that big white bear and her two black-eyed cubs float away. Carpe Ursus maritimus, Carpe Congo abeli. Orangutans grooming their 97% identical to human genome cells in the rainforest. Please carpe the rainforests. Carpe Panthera pardus orientalis. Carpe Panthera tigris sondaica. Big cats in their patterned fur coats, in their slink vanishing away from us. Carpe Balanoptera musculus, whale sharks circling our dreams. Vessling its way through our paintings and poems. Carpe Thamnotitis giganteum, giant ibis, the world's most endangered and evolutionarily distinct bird. Carpe Adalaska anops, how I wave wolf spider that doesn't spin a web, that chases down its prey the way we are chasing our own tails now, digging ourselves a meteor-sized crater of a grave, exponentially expanding daily what we'll take down with us. Dragging the aurora borealis and its tundra and permafrost after us. Yes, forget the day. Carpe, the last of the dark sky places, the quietest places on earth. The deserts with their nocturnal rhythms, flora and fauna that know what it is to survive. Yes, forget the day. Carpe noctis, carpe noctis. Let there be stars when we seize the last of the light. Okay. Thank you. First row, everything. Sorry, y'all. Okay, so there's also, oh my goodness. I'll read it with me. So there's also a series of poems in the book that are what I call the Anthropocene blessings. So they're all written for a different endangered species. I'm not trying to give you one of them. It'll be first. So, okay. So they're scattered throughout the whole manuscript. Oh, hey, thanks. I think I'm good at swallowing. Okay. So they're scattered throughout the whole book. I'm just going to give you one of them. This is my favorite buddy. Anthropocene blessing, California condor. King of birds, you of the 9-foot wingspan, You who glide for hours on currents of air without a single beat, thousands of feet above the leaden earth. Scavenger ancestor, only surviving member of your genus, longest lived. May you feast on the flesh of the dead as you toss their spirits up to the sky. May the carrion ghosts look down upon your unplumaged head, your black-feathered sacred form, and be healed of all that stalked them in this world. May you not be poisoned by our buckshot, seething in each carcass we leave behind. May you outgrow our captivity to hatch your single eggs in mountain cliff caves, giant redwood trees. New world vulture, may your bulbous, wrinkled visage remember how you soared over mammoths. May you be revered as virtuous, as rising back from the brink, as gathering your flock around the fall. May you take death in your mouth and find it sweet. Find that it sustains. I have two more for you. So this one, it's possible that I'm obsessed with the Svalbard global sea vault. Before it's a short story that my writing group is very familiar with, it was a poem. So for those who don't know, Svalbard Global Sea Vault is up in Svalbard, Norway, and is housing seeds from all over the world in case of disaster. It's trying to say to have one of every crop, basically, from all over the world, in case we have to come up with crops that can, grow it's hotter or colder or flooded or whatever. So vaulted seeds after the Svalbard Global Sea Vault. Hoarded at the heart of an Arctic mountain, within an archipelago of snow, an arc of seeds. Cocooned against soil, nuclear bodies hunker and wait for some future hungerscape. A gathering of crops, buried faces folded into foil, shuttered from the earth. Lentil, dark and round and pebble smooth, barley's slender husk of an eye. Each wrinkled chickpea, the embryonic head of a bird. Sister seeds in Aleppo, shelter abandoned in the rubble of war. The snow is a silence except for how the seeds call out to one another across landmasses that shift and warm. Svalbard reindeer swivel their ears to listen. Foxes pause ghost-like on the permafrost. With one quadrate eye, the vault reflects a frigid blue sea. Ringed seals bob and dive among the glassy flows. The vault's stone hull juts like a shipwreck in the drifted ice, while polar bears tough and lumber past the door. Inside, thousands upon thousands of promises to feed what may remain. Doomsday is other name, because we've already planted what's to come. And I'm going to give you the final poem in the collection, which is called Whale. The ocean's innumerable tiny mouths await the muffled impact like baby birds. Sediment clouds up at the dens it's settling, and the flesh is set upon. How the weight of loss can be beautiful in its opening. Luminous worms undulate like party streamers as isopods and lobsters arrive to feast. This body holds an ecosystem unto itself. Species found nowhere else but here, cleaved to the sunken remains. Sleeper sharks move in slow and gentle, ease the messy carcass to gleaming bones. And then how the skeletal rafters of grief buzz and bloom. How sometimes the coldest depths allow for such measured undoing. All the while, hungry lives swarm and spread, come to stay. Limpets attached to the unhidden core, sorrow in its abundance crushes, cycles, feeds. How the body rests, rich in what sustains. Q&A, yes.
We do.
Okay, I wrote and courses abandoned it for years and was really just a poet and didn't think I had chops for fiction. Like this was my home poet and I didn't think I had any stories to tell in that format. And then I had an idea for a story, and I was at a residency for poetry, but I had less time. So I was like, I think I'm going to try to write that little story, and I wrote that little story, which is not a story from the collection. It's my 4-month story, and then I decided that it was something I really wanted to include again. So I took some workshops to reacquaint myself with the craft. I joined a writing group. That's the galleries with the longstanding Portland prose writing group. And brought my fresh little new stories into the group. And they're responsible really for helping me hone my craft over the past 5 or 6 years. I started about 5 years ago, and I've been with the gallery for 4, I think, almost 3.5. So, but yeah, so it was a lot of feedback from people and some craft workshops and some really great critique and discovering that I had so the stories in the collection I just finished are the same subject matter as this last book of poems. They're all climate change, extinction, and Anthropocene age, and so it was really quite fun to be writing about the same subject matter in 2 different genres entirely. Talking to each other, not as specifically maybe as the stalwart little seagull is actually talking to that story, but they do have some recurring themes. So yeah, so I'm really enjoying it. It's completely different.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Oh.
How does it feel different? In what way is it a different muscle group?
Well, for one thing, for me, it's harder. So, I have to work a lot. I feel like the poems just sort of like, I know the language and I know the craft better, and I feel like things just sort of come to me, not necessarily fully formed, but more naturally. And I feel like I have to work a little harder at it for fiction. And I feel like one thing I do more of in fiction is research. So I actually really enjoy doing research, and I do some for poetry, but I do a lot for fiction. That's a different part of my brain too, is doing a lot of reading and investigating and researching on whatever it is I'm writing about. And then there's been some things that are more challenging for me that I don't really ever put in poetry, like dialogue, which I know some poets do have dialogue in their work, maybe not. So there's definitely things that are completely different for me in one genre than the other to try to tell that story. And of course the lane, I don't write long poems, I write short poems, so fiction is my long form storytelling, even though I don't go beyond short stories yet. So again, my short form storytelling. Yeah.
First a comment. I just really liked the idea of a persona collection. I just think that's very fun.
Yeah.
And then I noticed, because it's one of my favorite words, that you use the word cleave a couple different times, and I wondered if there's because I have this one.
Yeah.
If there's tick words that you have to monitor yourself for.
Yeah. It's funny that there are multiple poems with some of the same. I definitely have favorite words, and I do have to be careful. And I do too. That cleave is one of them. That's one of my touchstone words for whatever reason. And so yeah, I do try to not always use my favorite words all the time. But I also find I went to a craft talk that Natalie Diaz did at Tin House a few years back, where she talked about the use of not only the use of repetition in her work in terms of words, but also of returning to the same theme and the same words again and again, and why we sort of do that as poets, and how to do that. And still make it fresh every time. So that's what I try to do, at least if I'm using my favorite words. Leave one of filigrees or another, but you can get any filigree. Yeah, that I definitely have to watch myself.
What started you writing poetry?
No idea, I've been doing it since I. Yeah, I have little, books from when I was a kid that I illustrated and was writing poems. So I don't know where I first heard of poetry or how I first started it, but I definitely been doing it from since before I can remember. And then obviously, honed it over the years, became serious about it at some point. But yeah, it's a natural way for me to communicate, I guess, with the artist.
Who are you reading?
Who am I reading?
And who do you think influenced you? Who would you say influenced you?
Poetry wise?
Yeah.
Yeah. My current, I read mostly contemporary poetry, and my current favorites are Ava Lamone, yes, or Poet Laureate, which I was really excited about. I love her work. I love Joy Harjo's work. Sharon Olds influenced me heavily in sort of my early days as a young poet in college. It's heavily influenced by her and that sort of confessional style, and just being brave about writing about literally anything, that no matter how raw or maybe offensive or visceral it was. So I was heavily influenced by her work. I love Ross Gay's work currently because I'm a poet with not a lot of trauma in my past, and I love what he and some other poets, Amy has probably used too, with more joyous work, which now I feel I have permission to do that too. I felt like I needed to have something terrible to write about, and I love that they're sort of giving us permission now to write about things that are joyful. So I'm reading them recently too. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Your critique group, it sounds like gives you feedback on your short stories.
Yeah.
I was wondering what kind of feedback you get on your poetry and how you know when a poem is finished.
Yeah, so I do have a poetry group also. The fiction group meets weekly and it's very intense and it's very intentional. That's intentional. The poetry group that I have, we meet monthly and we're a little more loosey-goosey, but we've been meeting with each other for years. And so we know each other's work really well, and we know each other's voices really well, and trust each other with any sort of subject matter. So I think even though we meet less frequently, I still get a lot, or when we do meet, I still get a lot of valuable feedback from them. And they're not my only readers, because I have other people that I like reading my work and feedback to. In terms of how I know it's done, I don't know. I feel like that's a question that a lot of poets get asked about how they know something's done. For me, I guess it's just usually it has to do with my last line, I think. That's sort of my signature is my last lines, and I feel like when I really managed to bring the poem in a natural way to that last line, but then I got it. Oh, yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Seems like there's a lot of sorrow and grief in climate change.
Yeah.
And maybe not so much in daughters. I'm just wondering how that feels for you as a poet. Do you feel better having written through that, or do you feel more despair? And do you want us to feel that?
I did an eco poetry reading up at AWP last month, and having 5 of us read on that same subject matter was pretty intense. And so there is a lot of sadness in it, but I think so one, I guess, yes, I want people to feel that if they're reading it, because I think we need to be paying attention to that and getting off our butts and doing as much as we can about it. And I don't know that I necessarily feel better, but I think writing for sure is my way of processing those sort of difficult subject matter, things that are sorrowful or seem like there's nothing I can do about it. Maybe that I feel like art sometimes is a way of doing something about it. So for sure.
How do you go about writing a book of poetry on a theme?
Mm-hmm.
Is that so many days per poem? Do you outline them in advance, or do you just go with that? Do you also work on other projects at the same time?
Yeah, I'm a one project poet. Right, so my first book, which isn't in print anymore, really wasn't like that. It was sort of a collection of poems I've been working on for years, and which I think a lot of first books sometimes end up being in. But the ones that follow that, I feel like for me, it helps me to have a focus or a theme that I'm writing about and forward, that I feel like I'm more prolific that way. I don't have to like come up necessarily with what I'm gonna write next. So writing kind of just happened to come together because I wrote a few of those sort of response to the news poems, and then there was a call for chapbooks, and I was like, oh, those, and I found that I did, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know I'd written so many of those. So that one was really conscious in terms of, I just suddenly realized I had a bunch of them. Daughters was planned, sort of. I wrote Bigfoot's daughter, or no, actually Scarecrow's daughter first. And then I was working on this Bigfoot persona poem. I took a workshop where we did some persona poems, and I was like, oh yeah, I love persona poems. I'm gonna do some persona poems. And I wrote it from the perspective of Bigfoot. It wasn't working at all. And I was like, from the daughter's perspective. And it just acted, one, it worked, and two, it accidentally ended up being exactly the same length. It was six stanzas of 6 lines each. As same as the one I've written before. So I was like, okay, and now I have a project. So, so I decided, and I did set myself a goal. I'm like, there's 50 daughters, because otherwise I would have written for absolutely ever, because they were so fun to write. So 50 daughters, and every single one of them is six stanzas of 6 lines each. So just to make it even harder for myself, but they're not, they're not all, as I wrote more, I started to play around with them a little bit more. So there's some concrete poetry in here. So that one's the shape of an alligator, even though it's still 6 stanzas of 6 lines. So I still play around with it, keeping to my form, but having the form and the focus for that one, and knowing when I was going to end. It took me 5 years to write the numbers, but I kind of kids and all that in between. But yeah, I definitely I'm a project person, and then the current one was my pandemic book, and I just decided that's the theme that I have a lot to say about, to write about, and I used a series of prompts from Two Sylvia's Press. They do a poetry advent calendar every December, which for poets out there, I highly recommend it. It's like $20 or something towards the press, and then you get a different prompt every day for the month of December. And I decided that year, I'd written some poems, and I decided I was going to use those prompts to finish the book. And so no matter what the prompt was, I decided I was going to turn it into something I could use for my book. Not everyone made it into the book, but that was helpful too. So that's something I do when I get stuck, is these prompts. Parts of prompts usually, I hardly ever do the whole prompt exactly as prompted. So I don't know what I'm working on now. Now I don't have a new poetry project, but I've been focusing on the short story collection and on that marketing this new book. So I'm not sure what's next, but let's see. Maybe one more question. There are any?
Yeah, is there one last question?
No. Right, then I guess
Final poem?
I give you a final poem. I give you one full of hope. So this one was written from one of those prompts, actually. This was the Christmas Day prompt, and we were supposed to write about a miracle. I don't remember the rest of the details. That was the main focus of it. So this one's called Miraculous. When all the news is bad or worse, my ears ringing like a din of night insects, just swelter and drum. I quiet my bones with the thought of quaking aspen. Trembling giant, grove of thousands of trees, all with a single system of roots. 1,000,000 years old, bright fluttering of gold against blue. And when I think I can't take in another sorrow, each a stone stacked up like a cairn on my heart, I remember how the jaws of the snake unhinge. Its mouth opens and opens to enfold what's impossibly large. Patient swallowing followed by a length of rest. And when what we've done can't be undone, hope puts a speck on the future's woolly back. I jumpstart my wonder with this. The snow in Antarctica is sprinkled with the dust of ancient stars. While we hunted and gathered, the galaxy glittered and lay itself down in our light.
Thank you very much, Brittney, and what a great choice for your last poem. To end the reading. What a lovely evening. So I want to say thank you again to Brittney for being here, being our poet tonight. Can we give her another hand? Thank you very much. And Maxine Skates is going to be here in May. So we hope that you will join us. You're definitely invited. I want to say thank you to everybody, and thank you to those of you who have been logged in and watching this on live stream. Thank you, and I'm Tom Hogan for the Milwaukie Poetry Series, and we want to say good night.